how can I help my anxious kid? That is a question that a lot of parents are asking. And so I thought I would do a whole episode just on this, and maybe it could be more than one episode for sure if people have more questions. I think that if you have a kid that really struggles with anxiety, and if they have a mental health diagnosis, I would guess that they also have anxiety. It shows up in kind of different ways with kids than it does with us, but even with adults, it's sometimes hard to realize that that's anxiety. And so I'm going to talk about that, but more importantly, I want to talk about what you can do about it. Anxiety shows up in weird ways in kids. It can show up in behavioral outbursts. It can show up with frequent aches and pains, headaches, stomach aches, kind of always something's wrong, right? Like their legs hurt, their knees hurt, their arms hurt, their heads hurt. You know, they're frequent flyers a lot of times in the nurse's office at school. So just know that that's one of the ways that it kind of shows up. Also, I want to say that with the rising amount of kids with mental health issues, that 99% of the time anxiety is also there. So it's not that they only have anxiety, or that anxiety needs a label on it in order to deal with it. I don't think so. I want to give you some practical things to do with that. But I just want you to know it's very prevalent. And your kid is not the only kid that has generalized anxiety or acute anxiety, whatever it is. It also shows up with poor sleep habits. It can show up in isolation, just kids shutting down and not wanting to be around other people, other kids. They can be overly clingy. Sometimes kids will be sweaty. Like some kids that have a lot of anxiety, especially if it comes from a trauma background, they have a smell, like even in their excreted through their feet. They may be like a stinky kid, and it could be because of the anxiety. Fidgeting, they may be tense or withdrawn. School refusal, work refusal, just, their immediate answer is no, I don't want to do that. Irritable, appetite can change. It can be eating too much, eating too little, just eating because they don't know what else to do. So I want you to think about how anxiety shows up for you, and maybe take some time to think about what you've noticed in your kids, because if your kids have ADHD, if they are neurodivergent, my guess is that there's some anxiety there that's driving a lot of different behaviors. So it's very hard to change habits. It's very hard to just tell somebody to not be anxious or to get calm. So I want to give you some practical things that you can do as a parent to help your anxious kid. Number one is to be in charge. It's so important to have somebody that's in charge when you have a lot of anxiety. So you're going to have a daily schedule, you're going to build routines, and you're going to help them through transitions. And even though they may not like all the things that are on the schedule, you're not going to just let it go. And your kids that are a little more chaotic, you may think, well, they kind of like, being chaotic, but having the schedule and the routine puts you in charge, and it's so important. You're going to be in charge not by stomping around and being louder and more powerful. I'm going to help you to be in charge, because that's the most important part of helping your kids to calm down with anxiety. If somebody has a plan, somebody knows what to do, their brain can stop being on high alert that they've got to figure everything out. We do want to help them with their problem solving skills, but you have to be in charge to be able to do that. So by you being in charge, also I want to remind you that resilience is created, and resilience is really the ability to thrive despite the challenges. And I think that when we look at anxiety as it being something that we can't overcome, or that's just the way I am, and I can't do certain things because of my anxiety, we kind of wear it like a coat. We're maybe not being as resilient as we could, and so the ability to adapt and work through stress and anxiety helps us to build resilience, and we actually want our kids to be resilient. So another thing that can really help is to have less media time, especially with your anxious kids. They need less time on social media, less time on screens. and more family time. So first consider what you're bringing to the table in this in terms of anxiety and problems. Like if you're sitting around the table and you're talking about all the bad things that are happening and how much you disagree with the school and the teachers and every place of authority, just be careful about that. That creates a lot of anxiety in kids, because if all the grown-ups are upset and it looks so hopeless and helpless, and a lot of times in our discussions about the things that are happening in the world, we don't see anything we can do to help. I've seen a lot of good things happen in families where they are discussing current events and current situations, but they are coming up with solutions of that we can't solve all of it, but here's what we're going to do our part to help. That's a totally different conversation than just venting about how the school is against you, or the school bus is terrible, or whatever it is that you're upset about, and your kids hearing that and then not having the confidence that they need to have to even go to school. If you're saying a lot of bad things and then you're sending your child there for 8 hours a day, it can be very disconcerting for your child. So first consider what you're bringing to the table in terms of anxiety and problems, and that you want to teach your children how to get along and how to connect and how to handle problems and how to handle other people that we don't agree with. How are we going to handle that? If we don't agree about something, even on a bigger scale, a global scale or a nationwide scale, like what action steps can we take, or what can we show our kids that we're accepting, and that what things are we don't know, and so we're waiting and seeing, and just toning it down maybe in the angst that you might be feeling about things can help a lot with our kids. The anxiety in kids has increased so much since COVID. It's crazy. And it was pretty high before, but I kind of called it the worried well. Now it's so prevalent in so much of our society. And I think that because at that time, nobody really knew what was going to happen or what to do, and it kept changing. And I think our kids saw that it was changing day to day, whether we were going to school or not going to school, or what we were going to do. And the families that were able to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but here's how we're going to handle it as a family, that reduces the level of anxiety. And again, that's you being in charge as the parent and being able to set that tone of how that's going to be. Another way that we can lower anxiety and deal with anxiety is to help others. Anxiety and depression a lot of times is driven by anxiety. It's like our bodies are on high alert for so long and then we get depressed. But just being able to help other people and get that focus off of ourselves and our problems, and helping other people with their problems, and not just to vent, not helping them by, I'm supporting them as they, are in misery, and we're just, we're there for them, whatever that means, but really actually, doing some things to help. And that kind of ties in with being resilient and what we bring to the table. Another thing that lowers anxiety is just being really clear about what your family values are. What your values are as a person will actually lower your anxiety too. If you think about, like, I don't know everything, but I do know this, and I know that this is what I believe, and this is what I think is important to teach my kids and to know what I believe. They are going to find their own path for sure. But while they're children, while they're in your home, I think it is very important that you teach family values, that you teach the values that your family has. And that may require you to look inside yourself and figure out what those values are. But I think it's important for your kids to know what you believe about these things, and then they will still find their own way. I've worked with a lot of families that don't want to do that. They want their kids to just come to their own conclusions. But the problem is that we're not meant to do that. We're meant to have a foundation that's built in our homes, and then kids are meant to find their way through it. Well, this is what my parents believe, and here's what I'm coming to believe, or I believe this also, just like my dad or my mom or whatever. So it's fine, and I feel like there's a lot of pressure on parents, and sometimes in the mental health field, maybe even in the schools, for the kids, for us to not impart our beliefs on our kids. We can't force anybody to believe it anyway, but we can raise somebody with those values. And I think that if it's important to you, that you would want to share that with your kids, and they will. Don't worry, they will still find their own way through that. It's a lot different than forcing it on somebody and then they find their own way because of rebellion. So this is a different place than just, talking about shoving something down their throat, but it's just the standard in which you believe in how you're living out your beliefs. Your kids need to know that. So if you were really involved in something else as a family, whether it was, snowmobiling or horses or skiing or, maybe you were like my husband's family, they were all ranchers. So their kids grew up learning that and being around that. And some of them have continued to do that as adults and some of them are not. Everyone gets to choose, but that was their background. That's what they were taught. And that's part of their family heritage. And there's no hard feelings if somebody decides to do something else. It's okay. So these are just some little things that can really help you to transform your family and to make those changes. So if you're want to know more or you need some help with that, or you're like, you don't know my kid, they're like super neurodivergent, or they have such high anxiety that they can't even go to school, whatever it is, then please get the help that you need. I would love to give you more at the end of this. In the description, I'm going to give you a free resource that you can download for managing family stress. More that you can do to manage family stress than the little bit I was able to give you here. You can join the Playroom, which is our online parent coaching group. We meet every week, and you get individual coaching, plus you get to hear other people and what they're dealing with, so you don't feel so isolated and alone and stressed out all by yourself. You can see that other parents are dealing with this, and the great ideas and the things that people are seeing happen in their families is amazing. So I'm gonna leave you with all of those resources. The other thing that you can do that would really helps us out a lot is if you would like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also pass it on to other people. If you know someone else that is saying, like, my kid is so anxious, or they weren't even able to go to school, or they had a panic attack, or whatever it is, or you just know that they're anxious, pass this video on, share it on your Facebook, share it on whatever. That's great. I want it to be given out there. This is just free content. So this is a way you help us, is by making it available to all the people in your circle so that more people can get this information. Again, look in the description and I will give you a free resource on managing your family stress. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope this was helpful.